but for the past 20 years, every consecutive year has been harder than the previous one, as you have probably noticed, and this may seem quite a challenge. We are starting to change our habits, which is very difficult. But on the other hand, it's an opportunity, because perhaps this transformation, perhaps what needs to happen is has a lot of positive aspects as well. Perhaps we shouldn't talk about transformation as something challenging and difficult, but also as something that brings opportunities. Now, this slide shows you what a climate pact is. I'd like to encourage you to enter our website to talk to us about how to join the pact. Just anyone can become its ambassador, because just anyone can do something in their lives. What we mean here is to close the gap between supply and demand. Supply is a politics, regulations, and the demand is on your side. So can we generate this demand? And I think it would be a good thing for us. In this way, I'd like to transition to Madam Mayor Zdanowska. What are we doing in Łódź? First and foremost, thank you very much for coming here at this early time in the morning. It's for people here and virtually. Thank you for coming here and talking about your experiences, your little steps that change reality. Nothing can happen without small steps. If we don't make the first step, even the greatest initiatives will be dead. What are we doing in Łódź? We are here to tell you about what's happening here. In our city here, I'm really jealous of Markku. I've seen Helsinki, which is wonderful. The thing they've done there locally that is going to preserve our world, hopefully, in the future, in a perhaps better state. So this transformation in this scope, in this extent, is starting right now. So to understand Łódź, you need to understand first and foremost its history. It's a post-industrial city with great problems, a city that was left to its own devices in the transformation period. It still has 40,000 apartments in more than 5,000 buildings, which in 60% were built before 1945. Most of them have never been modernized, and nobody has ever thought about improving them in terms of heating, which is crucial, or even simple changes affecting the quality of life. Just what you said, Katarzyna. Not everybody understands the change. We need to improve the quality of life, improve our health, improve the surrounding world. So the apartments that we have right now was still the case, even though in 2017 we found out that a lot of people were using furnaces. Now, what are the problems in Łódź? First of all, heating systems in individual houses. In 2017, so we had 80,000 individual heat sources. Right now it's 40,000. That's still a lot. Most of them fired with the simplest fuel, which is coal. So this is a challenge. Another thing, another crucial thing is heat escaping from buildings. The buildings were not measured or tested for heat transmission through the walls, so the buildings were not thermo-modernized or insulated. Now, modern technology makes it possible to measure to insulate, but we also need to take into account that many buildings are historical. We cannot use traditional techniques there. Another challenge for Łódź is flash floods and great droughts. Now, the region of Łódź is threatened with becoming a steppe land or indeed a desert. It's hard to talk about the entire region, but for example, Bełchatów, it's a great depression that drained a huge basin around it. So for as long as this Great Depression is there, until it is refilled, it's going to continue to cause great problems also in our city. Another thing is islands, heat islands. We are counteracting them. We have a number of programs. We want to eliminate squares like that. In the past, each mayor wanted to have a large square with a tarmac or concrete surface. Perhaps in the past they were necessary, but these days those concrete squares are extremely hot. They are like sweltering places. In other weather, there is nowhere to hide from rain. So another problem for our city is energy poverty. These are the things we're facing. It's not a rich city. It's a city with a past. It requires some interventions in terms of social improvements. So a number of changes that we initiated and continuing. So obviously, low emissions and pollution, these are key issues in the city center. Also, heat sources in that area. We have divided the city into smaller compartments, and we've been implementing a large block revitalization program. Under the past perspective, we carried out 8 projects that we were used to change everything for comprehensive thermomodernization, revitalization of buildings with connecting urban heating, district heating in the city center. It wasn't there before. Also greening of large areas of land and streets. Streets never had any substantial greenery. Now, we're getting trees in all streets and yards, and also individual citizens, inhabitants of the city can use programs to green the areas, plant trees. So these are all activities aimed at integrating us around greenery and biodiversity protections. A Pact for Łódź, another program. We invited everyone so that voluntarily we could implement important things, the development of green areas, improve air quality, manage waste, and conduct environmental education. It's crucial because we need to know what important things we can do ourselves without any substantial means or great resources or swaths of land. We can still take small steps. So we've been working with business to a substantial degree. We can count on the business's help in these small things. Business also can see the need to support the city as part of corporate social responsibility and support a number of large projects in terms of greening, biodiversity, water, clean water and water retention. So I could be talking for hours about initiatives in Łódź, so thank you very much for your attention. And many thanks to Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak to what you said about integrating and public-private partnership. What I find most important, I've been dealing with this subject for the past 3 years, we can accelerate and conduct a green transformation on time only if we cooperate. Now, a small additional question to Madam Mayor. Now, yesterday, as we talked to young people, I asked them, how do you feel? What can you do? They say, oh, I cannot do anything. We have this kind of system. Now, what is your opinion? What do you need from citizens? What would you like to ask the inhabitants of Łódź to do? What can you do together to improve things so that we are there on time? Well, first of all, we need to understand ourselves, understand the needs of the city. Now, we also need to understand that sometimes individuals must yield to the interest of the public. Right now, we're facing a conflict at our border where we have biologically valuable land, and a lot depends on it, especially the Łagiewnicki forest depends on it. Now, there's a private property. Someone wants to sell it for development. On the other hand, it looks like it's necessary to leave that area as heritage city for the future generations, for the Łagiewnicki forest to survive and to ensure good aeration of the city, airflow. So it's my great request. We shouldn't intervene only when there is a tangible problem, but if a city does something right, we should unequivocally support the city. I understand the interest of the individual is important, but we should put the interest of the public first too, as our survival as society, as a species. Before our meeting here, we talked about it. Since 1980, 30% of biodiversity has disappeared from the globe. It's a catastrophe. It's not something that's been going on and is still going on. It's a downright catastrophe. So understanding, awareness that we are fighting for something more than today and tomorrow. Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Markku of Helsinki. Markku, what's the transformation like at your place in the north? Do you have similar challenges, or maybe you've been able to solve some problems? What is the narration? Here we must talk about a catastrophe. Not everybody understands it. Now, we can already see the catastrophe when we look at our energy bills. But what's the situation in Helsinki?
Okay, thank you, Katja. I know you as well as your role as a moderator, since we've been collaborating already with the Commission of the Climate Pact initiative. And thank you especially, Hanna Zdanowska, you mayor. You've organized this event and you pushed forward a lot of activities, so which can really have a crucial positive influence and impact on energy and the renewal of the city structures. I want first to say that I've as well personally visited Łódź. So I was there a couple of years ago. So when we planned what we can do in the industrial collaboration, especially bio-industries, and knowing your city's history in manufacturing, in industrial issues. So that is crucial. what was already said, so that the public and private collaboration is crucial. So especially reacting your question, so everyone really can be part of this process. Saving energy is the cheapest, it's safest and cleanest way to reduce our resilience and our independence of the Russian fossil fuel, which is the crucial role today. I'm representing the whole Helsinki region as the president of our regional council, working there practically weekly on these issues, but as well, so then I come personally from city of Espoo, the second largest city in Finland. Espoo has 300,000 inhabitants. We are part of this, the whole Helsinki metropolitan region. Total, the region, 3 major cities, 1.2 million people together. So we have a lot of common that we collaborate here. And that makes a lot of sense in these energy issues as well. So part of our long-range activity already started tens of years ago was to build a district heating system. So large majority, up to 90% of the households being there, even one-family houses in some cases, but residence buildings especially, they are part of the district heating system. We have even in Espoo, my city, so we have 800 kilometers pipes, heating pipes. So that makes so that everything is easier to organize using different energy sources. We are still to a small extent using coal. Now with the next winter, so we decided that, okay, we need to keep on using that, but we will get in 2-3 years' time out of using coal, so moving totally to renewables. And one point is when we have 3 cities, so we can go a bit differently. So Helsinki will keep on using coal a bit longer time. They have a huge, extensive program as well to move to carbon neutrality, since all of these 3 cities here in the metropolitan region. So we try and we will be carbon neutral already by 2030. So moving quite fast. And that is in Espoo, we actually started well targeted activities already about 10 years ago. We established a joint, let's say, political steering group for our sustainability activities. So it was a kind of sustainable Espoo, building the roadmap for activities, and we had the representatives of the all political or major political groups, key policymakers, but key civil servants as well, so that we were working together. And one of our strengths is so that in-depth collaboration with local industry, large companies, small companies, so we can now build our action plans focusing on the European Union missions. We are among the 100 climate neutral cities EU mission. We are among the climate adaptation mission, and hopefully as well on the other missions more and more, so that we can make these transformations to happen. And maybe I'll just say our 5 priority areas and then conclude. So first, approved by the City Council, we want to be one of the forerunners in implementing Sustainable Development Goals, so UN SDGs, and that's a kind of backbone. It's the starting point for everything. So we want to show that how we do that within already the next couple of years, so to help other cities as well on that. So we will, the second of our action points, major targets, is to be this carbon neutrality in the whole city by 2030. The third is that the city community and residents will more and more learn to act sustainably, and that's taking everyone on board. So we have a lot of programs with schools, so small children are involved, all the universities are involved, and so on. And the fourth point is that the we create our activities as a model of city of sustainable urban development. So urban planning is integrated that when we build new houses, so they are part of the energy system and so on. And the fifth is that we want to be the best developer or partner for all our actors here, industry especially. And from that, so then I come to the conclusion that between these climate pact activities, with Repower EU activities, with the new European Union innovation agenda, we should do more together between cities. So maybe one good option could be, let's talk a bit more about that as well. Should we kind of do a small benchmarking or even bench learning, so learn from the facts and figures of practices between Łódź and either our Helsinki region or the city of Espoo, so that we can share of these practices and learn from that. So what was done for the long term, but as well what can be done on a short term, taking the next winter period into account. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Markku. Bardzo dziękuję.
I think that from what we have just heard, we can take three major things. That is, first, you mentioned different policies that are currently negotiated with the EU member states. But you, from the Committee of the Regions in individual towns and cities, you know the best what it means putting these regulations in place in practice. And I think that as a bureaucrat from Brussels, I hear that we invent some regulations and then people at lower levels have to implement them. Perhaps this is the case, so we should cooperate. You cannot solve the problem with even the best regulation if it doesn't take account of the reality. So if there are and of course, this is very difficult because let's remember that there are diverse needs and problems in different parts of Europe. My daughter, who is 16, she asked me some time ago, why aren't we doing nothing? They told her, well, you know, systems and everything is very difficult, but it's very important to teach our children about biodiversity, to tell them that green is not only about trees and protecting trees and wild boars. That's all very important, but since the breakout of the war, green means also freedom from fossil fuels and freedom to choose my own mode of heating. You mentioned industry, Markku, and I think that's also very comforting what we've heard from you, because industry is often perceived, well, it depends on the type of industry. Sometimes this transformation is very difficult, and we are afraid that through lobbying, some processes get slower than they should be. But if we find a modus operandi to cooperate with industry, I'm sure that we'll be able to go ahead at a faster pace. Now, I would like to invite Marieke Schouten. Whenever I cooperate with the Dutch people, you have a very good way of cooperating with industry and business. I hope you will tell us about it, what it looks like from your point of view in the Netherlands. Marieke, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Katja. And also a big thank you to Madame Mayor Hanna for inviting us. I'm very sorry we can't sit around the same table, but the good thing is technique helps us. So thank you very much for having me. It's quite a big question that's on our table. My city is, again, quite different from, I think, Łódź and from Helsinki. We used to be two small villages that were joined 50 years ago, and there used to be farmland, and now it is a condensed city, enclosed by 3 highways and 2 very busy rivers. So that just shows the difference between, I think, Łódź, with many older buildings, which I think in itself provide a very big challenge this time, and perhaps Helsinki and my town. You asked what is our experience with industry, and perhaps if I may add, water management. What I see in my city, the sense of awareness that climate is changing and it is also affecting us, is really growing. And the last summers, strangely enough, have helped us because the weather has been fairly extreme. And a very typical problem in the Netherlands has been an increasing drought. And that sounds very strange for a country that always has been used to dealing with too much water. And now, all of a sudden, we have to have a change in our mindset in dealing with that we don't have perhaps enough fresh water. To bring it back to my town is a city, but when you look closely, you still see old ditches and old lines of old trees lined with the trees from 50 years ago. And actually that water system is also used to help stop salinization in the western parts of the country. So what happens in extreme circumstances, the water management system will reverse the course of the water to push back salinization in the western coastal parts. To go back to my own place and what can I do, what can we do together, and again, really together with industry, with civil society organization, with other governments, and there's a lot of things that we can do. It's providing small subsidies so that people can stop wasting water. For instance, now rainwater often literally goes down the drain. But we really need to store water much more cleverly, for instance, by building underwater storages, which we are doing now in new building spots. Or we need to think about circular water management systems, which we can again do in new building spots. Older buildings are much harder. But I think what is really needed, people are also, what we are dealing with in the Netherlands, and I don't know how it is in Poland or in Finland, the trust of people in government is actually very low. And we have to really bear that in mind when we are addressing climate change issues. So I see it as really important for us, especially in this time when there is energy price hikes, when there is really a feeling of what's going to happen because of the war of Russia against Ukraine. We really need to think about a cohesive narrative. And we need to take small but significant steps which show people what we actually do and what the impact of these steps are. And that, to give an example of that, when we are in my city are repaving streets, we make them permeable so that water can be stored underneath and is not going in the drainage system. That's something that's a small step, but significant, and we need to make it visible. So that's really important. I think secondly, what we need to do is to show, and Mr. Markkula and Mrs. Hanna also said the same thing, we need to really show that we cannot do this on our own. No man is an island and no city is an island. So working together with other governments and working together with industry is important. But I would add to that, it's also really important to show which role you have as a government in such kind of public-private partnership. Because as a government, I feel I'm also responsible for the well-being of all citizens. That's my role, or that's our role. And a business has a different purpose. So yes, working together, we must do. For instance, we are doing that on hydrogen, but do it from the respective roles that we have. So that's very important. A cohesive story, working together, take small but significant steps and create a perspective for people. And if I may close with a question, if I may, when Madame Mayor was talking about lots, I think I heard the challenge of how do we perhaps prepare all these older buildings in our cities, with everything that is around it, how do we prepare these for the future? And I feel that's quite a big challenge. And how do you work with industry? because from hearing from your story, that's also quite a challenge. So perhaps that we could share a little bit on how you are doing that. I feel really inviting them around the table together with the citizens group is very helpful, and also be very clear on the role that you have. Here I would like to stop, and I'm very much looking forward to an exchange of thoughts on this.
Thank you very much. Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you very much. You've touched on a very important subject, water management. Water is like electricity. Well, still not a long time ago, it was enough to switch the light on and there was light, and it's enough to turn on the tap and there is water. While right now it's not so sure. My mother has kept on repeating me, don't waste water. Perhaps water is too cheap, because right now we have started saving electricity, but perhaps not water. Agnieszka, there was a question concerning cooperation with business. So I'd like to ask you, as a businesswoman, as a mother, woman, professor, to tell us how do you see the Pact and what we have talked about today.
Thank you very much. I'm very much for cooperation that you mentioned. It's a great value that I've been supporting, whether as an expert or as a person associated with science or as an expert supporting business. Now, Kasia, you mentioned this multitasking aspect. From my perspective, I cannot really put a line where I'm an expert, where my role finishes, and when I start being a consumer, where I start my private life. This is something that is becoming completely blurred now. These activities that we undertake are extremely fluid. As a result of the fact that all of us are consumers, since all of us make decisions and our consumer behaviors changing substantially due to the circumstances in which we are. For example, the pandemic. The pandemic has drastically affected our behaviors and expectations. Now, business responds to this as part of a systemic change. It has been evolving substantially. A regulatory leader that imposes certain framework, enabling transformation that stimulates us to keep up the speed and changes the face of the economy, of the economic model in which we live. And we know that we need to depart from it. We've been talking a lot about challenges. It is a challenge for all of us, for experts, certainly for the regulator to keep up with the change. It's also very difficult. Sometimes I hear negative opinions that regulations do not reflect the economic reality. Indeed, this reality has been changing so fast. It's very difficult to keep up. I prepared a presentation for today, but listening to yesterday's debates and discussions, I would not be able to go through the presentation because I'd like to talk to what was said yesterday. We talked a lot about freedom. Now we talked about a shift in decision-making, that the EU has been shifting towards us, to the east. So I thought, okay, so perhaps we need to take a look at Maslow's ideas, principles, that our basic needs until we can meet our basic needs, biological, physiological, like water, air, the comfort of living. Now, how can we talk about climatic ideas? Well, we can, because it's all very closely related to climate change. As farmers could perhaps tell us about it, farmers who suffer from flash floods and droughts, on the other hand. And then we suffer because when we look at our baskets or shopping carts, everything is much more expensive. So I found a very wise sentence by Einstein: the world as we create it is a process of our thinking, and we must not change it. We cannot change it without a change in our thinking. Now, what does it mean for me? We all have an impact on the climate, on the environment. All of us as a system, and as an individual, as humanity, and as a single individual. So entering a dialogue, making choices. Of course, on the one hand, we will see limitations, but looking at what you mentioned here, it's an opportunity for something new, for building, developing new concepts, perhaps entirely new business ideas, and developing new jobs by the same token, new solutions, new startups. I think that this perspective is quite optimistic, given all of the information, alarming information that we've been fed from, for example, IPCC reports, which stimulate discussion during climate summits. I'd like to conclude my utterance with another wise sentence. Now, change. If we want to implement change, we need to become change, irrespective of what our role is, whether we're just an individual, an expert, an officer. We must start with ourselves, and using the Kaizen method, we can achieve snowball effect. Great. We could stop here, but we won't. But I'd like everyone to take note of your wise words, which are very much consistent with the pact, with what you mentioned. Again, I'd like to call up the whole panel. We got 5 additional minutes because we started late. Marieke and Markku, could you please round up what we heard today? Have you heard anything inspiring? Or on the other hand, okay, today it's Saturday, but Monday we're going back to work, or perhaps we never stop working. What's the next challenge that's the same time solution going forward? Markku, would you please address this question?
Thank you. First, let me react on this issues of water, because water is the main, I would say, the key source of our planet and of our living. So that is really crucial. One thing that everyone could do, so European Union has now launched the one of the 5 missions which is focusing on oceans and water. So, but it's not only the big oceans, but it's as well all freshwater issues. It's about lakes and rivers, how to get them. Many of them are too polluted, so how to move to zero pollution, so cleaning. But as well, so how we operate with the groundwater, so the fresh water that we need for our households, for drinking, for making wood, for washing, etc. So, and this is something that since in Finland, so we have close to 200,000 lakes. So water, fresh water, fishing, all swimming on lakes. So all is so crucial, so that we've planned and done a lot on that. So how to have our water system. So as an example here, most of the metropolitan region, Helsinki metropolitan region, drinking water and washing water, that comes from a lake a bit more than 100 kilometers to the north from here. And in addition, we use our groundwater here. So, but we need to keep them fresh. So whatever water you have, you can drink that. So this is one element. So then we have linked to that as well. So wastewater treatment. So how to manage with that. And now we are opening in Espoo, the western part. So we are opening a new wastewater management treatment plant there, and which is the most modern in the world. And that is something that we could learn and share the practices around in Europe. So we take the energy out of that wastewater and so on. So it's part of the energy system as well. So these kind of experiences are something that we could use and lodge your city and lodge the region. You could join with this EU mission on oceans and waters as well, to share these good practices and move ahead. So my kind of key point is really that let's do more together with the cities, learn from each other, get our schools, universities increasing the collaboration and get our industry to be part of that. And that means then citizens as well. So all these are interlinked to this issue.
Thank you very much, Markku. Marieke, twoja reakcja.
Marieke, your reaction, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. A group of young professionals in the Netherlands invited me a while ago for an energy class, and they asked me the question, when you visited COP26 in Glasgow, what did touch you the most? And I think it was that question that they asked that actually touched me very much. These were professionals working in fossil industry, with government and other areas, and they were extremely motivated to work from where they are and to do the right things. So that I found very inspiring, and I think it challenged me to think in partnerships that are beyond the usual partnerships. So that is, I think, something that stayed with me. And I think the words that also come into my mind from the place where I am is how much empathy and how much solidarity can I bring into the actions that I do, because it is really not only me or us, it's the wider environment that we are talking about. That's the second point that I would like to take away also from today's meeting. And I think there is a lot that can be done. And at the same time, I also realize there is many citizens, at least in my town, and I come from a very rich country, I realize that very much, but still very many people feel as if they don't have a choice. And I find that one of the big challenges as well. So there is a lot of encouragement, and there is also a lot to take away that at least I would like to think about what does that mean for my day-to-day work as a alderman and vice mayor of my city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we are back to the stage now. I would like to ask Agnieszka first, and I'm speaking English, przepraszam. To się zdarza czasem, człowiekowi się przedstawia.
Okay,
Agnieszka, i chciałem skończyć potem na pani
Agnieszka, and I'd like to finish with Madame Mayor as our host. Now, it seems to me that what is important from our standpoint of all of us is that, especially concerning today's subject, is to think critically, but without excessive criticism, to create interdisciplinary teams, to know different points of view and develop solutions together. Many thanks, and I'm very happy that this discussion is taking place in Łódź. Work very closely with the textile sector, and value chains and supply chains are something that I know intimately. So Łódź is indeed a wonderful city that I love to visit, to come back to. I can see the transformation. I can see this global, act globally, think globally, act locally. Now I'd like to refer back to water. We didn't mention this, but water is also about a circular economy. Can we give up a new item of clothing? I'd love Łódź to produce as much textiles as possible, but we know that the manufacturing of clothes, for example, requires huge volumes of water. Now, as you said, it's connected vessels. We need to think in many dimensions. Our smallest decisions can save the world. Now, taking small steps, we can change the most important thing. Many thanks, first of all, to Marieke and Markku. Thank you very much for your attendance, for taking up us on our invitation. Hopefully, we'll meet face-to-face next time. I'd like to show you how Łódź has been changing very much. And again, many thanks to Katarzyna and Agnieszka to be with us. We are spreading information, raising awareness, what's important, that every one of us can do something that can save the world. If we don't have this awareness, these meetings are for us to remind us about this every day. Turn off the light, turn off the water tap. Okay, maybe wear your blouse or your jacket 2 months longer. Think about your responsibility for the world. Now, the world we live in, we've borrowed from our grandchildren. Let's give them a chance to give it back to their grandchildren again. Many thanks to the panelists, to the audience. Nothing to be added. Now I'd like to leave the stage to make room for the next panel. Any comments? Now let's talk in the wings.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihre Ausreise